The year was 2347, and humanity had spread across 17 worlds. They built colonies on distant planets, mined asteroids for metals, and created stations that floated in the darkness between stars. But they did all of this quietly. They kept to themselves. They did not reach out to the galaxy, and the galaxy did not reach out to them. Until now. Admiral Park Tae-ho stood at the observation window of Defense Station 7, positioned near the rings of Saturn. He was 63 years old, with gray hair cut short, and a face marked by decades of service. His uniform was simple, without medals or decorations. He did not need them. Everyone who served under him knew exactly who he was. The alarm had sounded 10 minutes ago. 3 unknown vessels had entered the solar system at impossible speed. They were not human ships. "Sir," said his communications officer, a young woman named Jisoo. "They are sending a message." "Audio and visual." Tae-ho nodded slowly. "Put it through." The main screen flickered, and then an alien appeared. It was tall, perhaps 3 meters, with a body covered in hard shell plates that shimmered like oil on water. Its eyes were large and compound, like an insect's, and great wings folded against its back. When it spoke, its voice was translated by some unknown technology into perfect Korean. "I am Ambassador Relis of the Volani Confederacy. We represent 12 great species who have ruled this region of space for 20,000 years. We come to offer your species a place within our protection." Tae-ho said nothing. He simply watched. Relis continued. "The Confederacy provides safety, technology, and purpose to young species like yours. In exchange, you will contribute resources and soldiers to our great union. This is not a negotiation. This is how things are done. Accept our generous offer, and your people will prosper under our guidance." The alien's tone made clear that guidance meant control. Protection meant ownership. "You have 1 planetary rotation to respond," Relis said. "We await your surrender with patience." The screen went dark. Jisoo looked at the Admiral with wide eyes. "Sir, what do we do?" Tae-ho was quiet for a long moment. Then he turned from the window and walked toward his command chair. "Forward the message to Earth Command. Every word. Let them see exactly what we are dealing with." "And our response, sir?" "We wait." On Earth, in the great underground chamber that housed the United Council, the message played on a screen 50 meters wide. Hundreds of representatives watched in silence. Some showed fear. Some showed anger. A few showed nothing at all. Fleet Commander Yuna was one of those who showed nothing. She was 42 years old, young for her position, but age meant little in the modern fleet. What mattered was skill, and Yuna had proven hers many times. She had dark eyes that seemed to look through people rather than at them. And she wore her hair pulled back in a tight knot. Her uniform was as plain as Tae-ho's. When the message ended, the chamber erupted in argument. Some demanded immediate communication with the aliens to avoid war. Others called for defensive preparations. A few shouted about humanity's right to exist free from alien control. Yuna waited until the council leader called for order. Then she stood. "They expect us to be afraid," she said. Her voice was calm and clear. "They have done this before. Many times. They arrive with ships and demands, and young species bow because they do not know what else to do." She paused and looked across the chamber. "We are not a young species. We simply look like one." The council leader, an older man named Junwoo, leaned forward. "What do you recommend, Commander?" "I recommend we accept their invitation to talk. Let them believe we are considering their offer. And while they wait, we will prepare a proper welcome." What kind of welcome?" Yuna's expression did not change. "The kind they will never forget." Near Saturn, the 3 Volani cruisers held position. Each ship was 2 kilometers long, covered in weapons that could turn planets to glass. Ambassador Relis walked the bridge of the flagship, his wings occasionally fluttering with impatience. His second officer, a reptilian creature named Voss, approached him. Voss was covered in dark green scales, and his eyes were yellow with slit pupils. Unlike the Volani, His people had been conquered centuries ago. Now they served. Ambassador, Voss said carefully. The humans have not responded with threats or fear. They simply acknowledged our message and asked for time. Relis made a sound like clicking stones. It was laughter. Of course they did. They are processing their shock. They have never seen ships like ours. They have never met beings like us. Soon they will realize their only path is obedience. Voss was not so certain. He had served the Confederacy for 40 years, and he had seen many species bend the knee. But something about this silence felt different. It was not the silence of fear, it was the silence of waiting. Should we scan their system more thoroughly? Voss asked. Learn more about their capabilities? Relis waved a limb dismissively. We know enough. They have small ships, simple stations. No weapons that could threaten us. They are children playing in the darkness. And we are the adults who have come to bring them home. Hours passed. Then a day. The Villani grew restless. But Relis insisted on patience. He wanted the humans to suffer in uncertainty. He wanted them to imagine what would happen if they refused. Finally, a transmission arrived from Earth. Admiral Tejo appeared on the screen. His face was as calm as before. Ambassador Relis, he said. We have considered your offer carefully. Our leadership wishes to discuss terms in person. We propose a meeting zone near Jupiter's orbit. Our diplomatic shuttle will arrive within 12 hours. Relis spread his wings slightly in satisfaction. We accept. But know this, Admiral. There is nothing to discuss. You will sign our treaty, or you will face consequences your species cannot imagine. Tejo nodded once. We understand. Please hold position. Our welcoming delegation will arrive shortly. The transmission ended. Voss stood beside the ambassador, his scales prickling with unease. A welcoming delegation. That is a strange choice of words. Relis ignored him. He was already imagining the ceremony where humanity would officially join the Confederacy as servants. It would be broadcast across all 12 home worlds. Another primitive species brought to heel, another trophy for his career. He did not notice the small smile that had appeared on Admiral Tejo's face in the final moment of the transmission, in the cold darkness beyond Neptune, where no Villani sensor could reach. Something ancient and massive began to wake. Lights flickered on across a hull that stretched for kilometers. Engines that had slept for years hummed to life. Thousands of crew members moved to their stations with practiced calm. Commander Yuna stepped onto the bridge and looked at the main view screen, which showed the distant light of the sun. All stations report, she said. Weapons ready, came the first response. Engines ready. Shields ready. Navigation ready. Yuna took her seat in the command chair. Around her, the greatest warship ever built by human hands prepared for its first mission. Set course for Jupiter, she ordered. It is time to introduce ourselves. The ship began to move, and the stars shifted around it. In a few hours, the galaxy would learn what humanity had been building in secret for 40 years. And nothing would ever be the same. The human shuttle was small. It was gray and boxy, with no weapons visible on its hull. It moved slowly through space toward the Villani flagship, looking like a toy next to the massive alien cruisers. Ambassador Relis watched it approach from the bridge. His compound eyes reflected the shuttle's image 1,000 times. Look at this, he said to Voss. This is what they send to meet us. A cargo container with engines. Voss said nothing. He was watching the shuttle carefully, trying to read something in its approach. But there was nothing to read. It was just a simple ship carrying simple creatures, or so it seemed. Inside the shuttle, senior diplomat Hana sat in a comfortable chair and reviewed her notes one final time. She was 54 years old, with silver streaks running through her black hair. Her face was kind, with lines around her eyes from years of smiling. She looked like someone's grandmother, which was exactly how she wanted to look. Across from her sat Lieutenant Minho, her military attaché. He was 30 years old, with a soldier's posture but a clerk's face. His uniform had no markings that would indicate special training. He appeared to be nothing more than a junior officer assigned to carry bags and look official. This was a lie. Minho was one of the most dangerous people alive. Remember, Hana said softly. We are here to listen. Let them talk. Let them boast. The more they tell us, the better. Minho nodded. And, if they become aggressive? Hana smiled gently. Then we remain calm. Fear is what they expect. Surprise is what we will give them. The shuttle docked with the Villani flagship. The airlock opened with a hiss, and Hana stepped through first. Minho followed 2 steps behind. The interior of the alien ship was vast. The ceilings rose 10 meters high, designed for species much larger than humans. The walls were covered in strange patterns that might have been art or writing or both. Armed guards lined the corridor, each one towering over the 2 humans. Hana walked forward without hesitation. She did not look at the guards. She did not show any sign that their size impressed her. Ambassador Relis waited in a conference chamber at the end of the corridor. He stood behind a long table made of some dark material. His wings folded. His compound eyes fixed on the humans as they entered. Welcome, he said, though his tone suggested the opposite. Hana bowed politely and took her seat. Minho stood behind her, hands clasped, face blank. I am Senior Diplomat Hana, she said. I represent the United Earth Council. Thank you for agreeing to meet with us, Ambassador. Relis made his clicking laugh. You speak as if you had a choice. Your species is young. You have no power in this galaxy. The Confederacy offers you protection from dangers you cannot imagine. You should be grateful. Hana nodded thoughtfully. Perhaps you are right. We know very little about the galaxy. Would you tell us more about the Confederacy? We wish to understand who we would be joining. Relis had expected arguments. He had expected fear or anger. This polite curiosity confused him for a moment. Then he decided it was simply evidence of human ignorance. Very well, he said. I will educate you. For the next 2 hours, Relis talked. He described the Confederacy's history, its 12 founding species, its 10,000 warships. He spoke of their plasma cannons that could shatter moons, and their shields that could withstand anything. He told stories of conquered worlds, of species that had tried to resist and been erased from existence. 17 species refused our offer over the centuries, Relis said with pride. None of them exist anymore. Their worlds are empty. Their names are forgotten. The Confederacy does not accept rejection. Through all of this, Hana listened. She asked questions. Simple questions that seemed innocent but pulled more information from the ambassador. How fast were their ships? How did their weapons work? How were conquered species treated? Relis answered everything. Why would he not? The humans were primitive. What could they possibly do with this information? Voss stood in the corner and watched the human woman carefully. Something about her bothered him. She was too calm. Her questions were too precise. She reminded him of the intelligence officers who had interrogated him decades ago, when his own people were conquered. Finally, Relis pushed a data tablet across the table. This is the treaty. Standard terms. You will provide 30% of your mineral production to the Confederacy. You will contribute soldiers to our military forces. You will accept Confederacy administrators on your worlds to ensure compliance. Hana picked up the tablet and read it slowly. Her expression did not change. This is very detailed, she said. Our council will need time to review it properly. We would also like to present some modifications. Relis's wings fluttered with irritation. Modifications? This treaty has been used for 20,000 years. It does not change. Hana set the tablet down gently. Ambassador, surely you understand. We are a democratic society. Our people must be consulted. If we sign something without their approval, there will be resistance. You do not want a troublesome territory, do you? This argument made some sense to Relis. Troublesome species required more resources to manage. It was better if they submitted willingly. Fine, he said. I grant you 3 planetary rotations. Present your response then. But understand, diplomat, There is no outcome where you refuse. There is only the question of how much your species will suffer before accepting the inevitable. Hana stood and bowed again. Thank you, Ambassador. You have been most informative. As the humans walked back through the corridor, Minho leaned close. I counted 47 guards. Standard energy weapons. Their armor has gaps at the joints. Hana smiled slightly. I noticed their navigation systems run on a crystal-based network, vulnerable to certain frequencies. Also, Minho added, the ambassador's second officer, the reptilian. He suspects something. Voss, Hana said. Yes. I saw him watching me. He is smarter than his master. We should remember him. They returned to their shuttle and departed without incident. As they flew back toward Earth's space, Hana opened a secure channel to Commander Yuna. Report. Yuna's voice came through clearly. They are exactly what we expected. Hana said. Arrogant, powerful, and completely unprepared for equals. Their technology is advanced, but not beyond our understanding. Their military doctrine relies on intimidation. They have never faced a serious fight. What about their leadership? Ambassador Relis is a fool who believes his own speeches. But he has an officer named Voss who sees more clearly. We should watch for him. There was a pause. Then Yuna spoke again. Good work, Hana. Return to base. The welcome party is almost ready. On the Villani flagship, Voss approached Ambassador Relis after the humans left. Sir, he said carefully, I have concerns. Relis was examining the conference table as if something dirty had touched it. About what? The humans. They did not react as expected. No fear. No anger. They asked many questions, but they answered almost nothing about themselves. Relis waved dismissively. They are simply ignorant. They do not understand their situation. Or, Voss suggested quietly, they understand it perfectly and are not worried. The ambassador turned his compound eyes on Voss. You think too much, reptile. These creatures have nothing. Simple ships, simple stations. They could not threaten the Confederacy if they tried for 1,000 years. Voss lowered his head in submission. But his thoughts remained troubled. Something was wrong. He could feel it. Back near Neptune, the UES Eternal Dawn moved through the darkness like a shadow. Commander Yuna stood on the bridge and looked at her crew, thousands of men and women working as one, preparing for the moment they had trained for all their lives. Commander, said Captain Jiho from his station. All systems are ready. We can arrive at Jupiter in 4 hours at standard speed, or 30 minutes at full power. Yuna considered this. Standard speed. Let them see us coming. Let them have time to understand. She turned to look at the main view screen, which showed the distant stars. They think we are children, she said quietly. Let them learn the truth slowly. It will make a stronger impression. The Eternal Dawn continued its journey toward Jupiter, 12 kilometers of war machine, built by a species that had learned long ago what it meant to be weak. The Villani waited, confident in their power. They had no idea what was coming. The Villani sensor officer noticed it first. A small reading at the edge of his screen. Something was approaching from the outer system. Ambassador, he called out. A human vessel is incoming. Probably their diplomatic shuttle returning. Relis barely looked up from his tablet. Let them come. Perhaps they are ready to sign. Voss walked to the sensor station and looked over the officer's shoulder. The reading was strange. The energy signature kept fluctuating, as if the sensors could not decide what they were seeing. Increase resolution, Voss ordered. The officer adjusted his controls. The image became clearer, and then his hands stopped moving. He stared at the screen without breathing. That cannot be right, he whispered. Voss leaned closer. Then he stepped back as if the screen had burned him. Ambassador, he said, his voice cracking. You need to see this. Relis sighed with annoyance and walked over. He looked at the sensor, reading for 3 seconds. Then 4. Then 5. Your equipment is broken, he said finally. Sir, I have triple-checked the systems. They are functioning perfectly. On the screen, a shape was becoming visible. It was long and dark, moving through space with terrible purpose. And it was enormous. According to the sensors, it was nearly 12 kilometers from end to end. No ship in the Confederacy was even half that size. This is impossible, Relis said. The humans have no capability for this. Our intelligence was clear. Perhaps, Voss said quietly, their intelligence was wrong. On the bridge of the UES Eternal Dawn, Commander Yuna watched the 3 Volani cruisers grow larger on her screen. They looked impressive, dangerous, but next to the vessel she commanded, they were nothing. Drop the stealth field, she ordered. Let them see everything. The darkness around the Eternal Dawn rippled and vanished. The ship emerged into full visibility, its black hull catching the distant sunlight. Weapons ports lined its surface like scales on a dragon. At the front, a massive opening housed something that glowed with soft blue light. The Singularity Cannon, a weapon that did not fire plasma or lasers. It fired concentrated gravity, a small piece of a black hole, compressed and aimed and released. Against such a weapon, shields meant nothing. Armor meant nothing. Captain Jiho stood beside the commander. He was a tall man in his early 50s, with calm eyes and steady hands. He had served under Yuna for 15 years. Energy readings from the Volani ships are spiking, he reported. They are powering weapons. Expected, Yuna said. Are our shields active? Yes, Commander. Full strength. Good. Open a channel. The communications officer worked his console. Channel open. Yuna straightened in her chair. When she spoke, her voice was broadcast across all frequencies, reaching not just the Volani ships but every sensor in the solar system. Ambassador Relis, this is Commander Yuna of the United Earth Fleet. We have considered your generous offer of protection. After careful thought, we must respectfully decline. On the Volani flagship, chaos erupted. Officers shouted readings that made no sense. The human ship was larger than their entire fleet combined. Its weapons were unknown to their databases. Its shields registered as impenetrable. Relis struggled to control his voice. Commander, you are making a terrible mistake. One ship, no matter how large, cannot stand against the Confederacy. We have 10,000 vessels. You will bring destruction upon your species. Yuna's response came through clearly. Ambassador, I appreciate your concern, but I think there has been a misunderstanding. The Eternal Dawn is not our warship. It is our diplomatic vessel. We chose it specifically because we wanted to make a good first impression. She paused for exactly 2 seconds. We have 14 more like her. 3 of them are larger. The bridge of the Volani flagship fell completely silent. Even the automated systems seemed to hold their breath. Voss moved to a secondary console and began pulling up every scan, every reading, every piece of data they had gathered since entering this system. He had been looking in the wrong places, focusing on the obvious ships and stations. Now he searched deeper, and he found it. Massive energy signatures hidden within asteroid fields, construction facilities buried in moons, shipyards orbiting gas giants, concealed by radiation belts. The humans had not been idle. They had been building, for decades. In secret, Ambassador, Voss said, his voice hollow. They're outer colonies, the ones we detected. They were decoys. Their real infrastructure is hidden throughout the entire system. They have more manufacturing capacity than our home sector. Relis stared at the image of the human ship on the screen. It hung in space like a god looking down on insects. Their main weapon, he managed to say. What is it? Voss checked the readings 3 times. I do not know. It is not plasma. It is not particle-based. It is not anything in our databases. Sir, their technology is not inferior to ours. It is different. Advanced in ways we do not understand. On the Eternal Dawn, Engineer Sujin monitored the ship's systems from the engine room. She was 38 years old, with short hair and grease-stained fingers. She had helped build this ship from the first welded plate. Power levels stable. She reported through her communicator. The Singularity is holding perfect containment. We can maintain full combat readiness for 37 hours. Yuna acknowledged the report and returned her attention to the view screen. Magnify the Villani flagship. The image zoomed in. She could see the alien officers through their windows, see them running back and forth in confusion. They are frightened, she observed. Should we press the advantage? Jiho asked. Yuna considered this. She could destroy those 3 ships with a single shot. It would be easy. It would prove humanity's power beyond any doubt. But that was not why she was here. No, she said. Fear is useful, but respect is better. Open another channel. When Relis heard the incoming transmission, he forced himself to stand straight. He was still an ambassador of the Confederacy. He would not cower. Yuna's face appeared on his screen. Ambassador. I understand this is unexpected. You came here believing you would find a primitive species. Instead, you found something else. This must be difficult for you. Relis said nothing. We are not your enemy, Yuna continued. We have no interest in war. We have no interest in conquest. We simply refuse to be conquered ourselves. If the Confederacy can accept this, then perhaps we can be allies, or at least, we can exist in peace. The Confederacy does not accept rejection, Relis said, but his voice lacked its earlier confidence. Then the Confederacy will need to learn, Yuna replied. Because we are not going anywhere, Ambassador, and neither is our fleet. She gestured, and the screen showed a map of space around Earth. 14 more massive signatures appeared, scattered across the solar system. 15 to Tangent-class battleships, each capable of destroying worlds. You spoke of 17 species who refused your offer, Yuna said. You erased them from existence. You are proud of this. I want you to remember those 17 species, Ambassador. Remember how easily they fell. She leaned forward slightly. Now ask yourself. Do you want to try for 18? Relis had no answer. For the first time in his long career, he had no words at all. On his ship, Voss looked at the human commander on the screen. He saw something in her eyes that he recognized. It was not cruelty. It was not anger. It was certainty, the absolute confidence of someone who knew exactly what they were capable of. The humans had built these weapons in secret. They had hidden their strength while appearing weak. They had let the galaxy believe they were primitive, defenseless, easy prey. They were none of these things. They were wolves who had disguised themselves as sheep. And now the disguise was off. Voss thought about his own people. Conquered centuries ago. Serving the Confederacy because they had no choice. He thought about what might have happened if they had possessed even one ship like the Eternal Dawn. For the first time in 40 years, he allowed himself to hope. Commander Yuna ended the transmission and turned to her crew. Stand down from alert status. Maintain position. Jiho raised an eyebrow. We are not pressing further? Not yet. Let them absorb what they have seen. Let Ambassador Relis send his reports home. Let the entire Confederacy learn what waits for them if they come to Earth with chains. She looked at the 3 small cruisers hanging in space, surrounded by power they could not match. We have made our point. Now we wait for them to be wise enough to understand it. The Eternal Dawn held position, and the galaxy held its breath. Ambassador Relis had not slept in 2 days. He had sent 17 urgent messages to the Confederacy Council. But the response would take time to arrive. Space was vast, and even their fastest communications moved slowly across such distances. He was alone with this problem. Alone with these impossible humans and their impossible ships. A request came through from the Eternal Dawn. The humans wanted to resume negotiations. Relis agreed because he had no other choice. Senior Diplomat Hana was shuttled to the massive human battleship for the new round of talks. This time, the meeting would happen on human territory. Ambassador Relis and Voss boarded a small transport and flew toward the ship that made their cruisers look like toys. As they approached, Voss stared through the viewport at the Eternal Dawn's hull. He could see weapon ports stretching in every direction. He could see the faint glow of the singularity cannon at the ship's front. The engineering required to build such a vessel was beyond anything he had ever studied. They built this in secret, he murmured. While we watched them. While we believed they were primitive. Relis said nothing. His wings had not moved in hours. The transport docked, and they were escorted through corridors that hummed with energy. Human crew members passed them without staring, without showing any sign that alien visitors were unusual. They were professionals doing their jobs, as calm as if this were an ordinary day. Hana waited for them in a conference room. She wore the same simple clothing as before. She smiled the same gentle smile. "Ambassador Relis," she said. "Thank you for coming. Please, sit. Would you like something to drink? We have water, tea, and coffee." Relis sat heavily in a chair designed for human bodies. It was too small for him, which he suspected was intentional. "I want nothing from you, except an explanation." Hana's smile did not fade. "An explanation of what? Specifically? This ship, your fleet, you appeared to be nothing. A minor species with minor capabilities. How did you hide all of this?" Hana poured herself a cup of tea. "We did not hide it, Ambassador. We simply did not advertise it. Humanity learned a long time ago that it is dangerous to be seen as a threat. It is equally dangerous to be seen as weak, so we chose to be seen as uninteresting, average, not worth the trouble of investigating closely. For how long? About 100 years, perhaps a little longer." Relis made a sound of disbelief. "You maintained this deception for a century? We are patient people when we need to be." Voss spoke up carefully. "The singularity cannon. We have never seen such technology. How did you develop it?" Hana looked at him with something like respect. "Our scientists discovered how to create and contain microscopic black holes about 60 years ago. The weapon applications came later. I am told it was an accident, actually. A containment failure that destroyed an entire research station. Our engineers looked at the destruction and thought, we should figure out how to aim that." She said this casually, as if describing the invention of a kitchen tool. The door opened, and Commander Yuna entered the room. She was followed by Admiral Park Tae-ho, who had come from Saturn on a fast transport. The Admiral nodded to the aliens and took a seat next to Hana. "Ambassador," Yuna said as she sat down, "let us discuss the future." Relis forced himself to focus. He was still a diplomat. He still had a job to do, even if the situation had changed completely. "The Confederacy will not accept your refusal," he said. "When my message reaches the Council, they will send a war fleet. Hundreds of ships, thousands. You cannot defeat them all." Tae-ho leaned back in his chair. He looked tired but not worried. "Ambassador, I have commanded human forces for 40 years. I have studied every war in human history. Do you know what I have learned?" Relis did not respond. "I have learned that the side with the biggest army does not always win. Sometimes the smaller force is more determined, more clever, more willing to sacrifice. Sometimes the bigger army is spread thin, protecting too many things, unable to focus its strength." He gestured around at the ship. "The Confederacy has 10,000 ships, protecting 12 homeworlds and 200 colonies. We have 15 ships protecting one system. If you send 1,000 vessels to attack us, where will those ships come from? Which territory will you leave undefended?" Voss understood immediately. The Confederacy's strength was its weakness. They had too much to protect. They could not concentrate their power without leaving gaps. But Relis was not finished. "You assume we would fight fairly. We could simply destroy your world from a distance. Burn your colonies, make Earth uninhabitable." Yuna's expression did not change. "You could try. But our planetary defense grid would make that difficult. And if you succeeded, if you somehow destroyed Earth, you would have made every human in the galaxy your permanent enemy. The colonies would scatter. The fleet would hunt. We would spend 1,000 years making you regret that choice." She leaned forward. "Ambassador, we are not threatening you. We are explaining reality. War between our peoples would be costly for both sides. Perhaps you would win eventually. Perhaps not. Either way, thousands of your ships would burn. Millions of your soldiers would die. And for what? Because you cannot accept that one species said no? Hana pulled out a data tablet and slid it across the table. This is our counterproposal. Read it. Relis picked up the tablet and began to read. His compound eyes moved rapidly across the text. The terms were simple. A mutual non-aggression pact. Trade agreements based on fair exchange. Not tribute. Freedom for any conquered species who wish to leave the Confederacy. Recognition of human sovereignty over their current territory. This is unacceptable, Relis said. You are asking us to free our subjects. To give up resources we have held for centuries. We are asking you to stop enslaving people, Hana said calmly. We believe that is reasonable. Voss spoke before he could stop himself. My people were conquered 300 years ago. We serve because we have no choice. If we had a choice. He stopped, suddenly aware that he was saying too much. But Hana looked at him with genuine kindness. If you had a choice, what would you choose? Voss was silent for a long moment. Then he said, very quietly, freedom. Relis turned on him sharply. You forget yourself, officer. I forget nothing, Ambassador. I remember everything. That is the problem. Commander Yuna watched this exchange with interest. She filed it away for later consideration. We do not expect an answer today, she said. Take our proposal to your council. Explain what you have seen here. Let them decide how to respond. She stood, and the other humans stood with her. But understand this, Ambassador. Humanity is not joining your confederacy. Not as servants, not as subjects, not as anything except equals. If you can accept that, we can be friends. If you cannot, she shrugged slightly, then we will be something else. After the meeting, Voss requested permission to tour the human vessel. To his surprise, Commander Yuna granted it. Engineer Sujin was assigned as his guide. They walked through corridors filled with activity. Sujin explained the ship's systems in simple terms, never talking down to him but never overwhelming him with details he could not understand. This is the main engineering deck, she said, gesturing at rows of consoles. The Eternal Dawn is powered by 4 fusion reactors and 1 singularity core. The singularity provides most of our offensive capability. The fusion reactors handle everything else. Voss stared at the singularity containment chamber. A sphere of light and impossible physics. This technology should not exist. Our scientists said stable singularities were impossible. Your scientists were wrong, Sujin said simply. Or maybe they just did not try hard enough. Why did you try at all? You had no enemies in space. Sujin's expression grew serious. We had plenty of enemies on Earth. For most of human history, we fought each other. Wars over land, over resources, over ideas. Millions died. Entire civilizations rose and fell. She touched the containment chamber's control panel. We learned what happens to the weak. The strong take what they want. The weak suffer. So when we reached space, we decided we would never be weak again. We would build weapons that could stop anyone. We would make ourselves so strong that no one would dare attack us. Voss thought about his own people's history. They had been warriors once, proud and fierce. Then the Confederacy came with their superior ships and their terrible weapons. What would you have done, he asked, if you had found us first? If you had discovered my people before the Confederacy did? Sujin considered the question carefully. I do not know for certain. But I think we would have offered to help. Trade, technology, maybe protection, if you wanted it. But not slavery. Never that. Why? Because we remember what it felt like to be conquered. Human nations did it to each other for thousands of years. We know how it feels to lose your freedom, your culture, your identity. We would not do that to someone else. Voss looked at this human woman with her grease-stained fingers and her honest eyes. She was not lying. She believed every word. For the second time in 2 days, he felt something he had not felt in decades. Hope. On the bridge, Commander Yuna received a report from Admiral Tejo. The ambassador will recommend accepting our terms, Tejo said. He has no choice. But the Council may not listen. They may send a fleet anyway. Look, I know, Yuna said. We will be ready. What about the reptilian officer? Voss? Yuna looked at a monitor showing Voss and Sujin walking through the ship. He is different from the others. He thinks instead of reacts. And he hates his chains. Even if he cannot admit it. Useful? Perhaps. Or perhaps he is simply a good person trapped in a bad system. Yuna turned away from the monitor. Either way, we will remember him. People like that may matter. If the galaxy ever truly changes. She looked out at the stars through the bridge viewport. And it will change, Admiral. We will make sure of it. 3 months had passed since the Villani diplomatic fleet first entered Earth's solar system. In that time, the galaxy had changed more than it had in centuries. The Confederacy Council had debated for weeks. Some members demanded war. Others urged caution. They watched the recordings Ambassador Relis had sent home, seeing the massive human battleship, hearing Commander Yuna's calm words, and they began to understand what war with humanity would mean. In the end, they chose peace. The cost of war was simply too high. The treaty was signed on a space station between Jupiter and Mars. Representatives from 12 Confederacy species stood on one side. Commander Yuna, Admiral Tejo, and Diplomat Hana stood on the other. Cameras broadcast the ceremony across 1,000 worlds. Hana read the final terms aloud. Non-aggression between humanity and the Confederacy. Trade based on fair exchange. And, most importantly, freedom for any species who wished to leave the Confederacy's control. 17 species had been conquered over 20,000 years. Within 1 month of the treaty, all 17 declared independence. 11 of them immediately contacted humanity, requesting diplomatic relations. They had waited so long for someone strong enough to break their chains. Now that someone had finally arrived. On Earth, Commander Yuna addressed the United Council. The chamber was full. Every representative had come to hear her speak. The crisis is over, she said. The Confederacy has accepted our terms. But our work is not finished. It is only beginning. She activated a display showing the galaxy. Thousands of star systems, hundreds of species, countless worlds. For a century, we hid our strength. We built in secret. Prepared in silence. Waited for the day we would need to reveal ourselves. That day has come and gone. Now the galaxy knows we exist. They know what we are capable of. She paused and looked across the chamber. The question is, what do we do with that power? The representatives listened in silence. I propose the Aurora Initiative. A fleet of ships dedicated not to war, but to aid. Medical vessels. Supply ships. Construction platforms. We will offer help to any species who asks for it. We will provide technology, resources, protection. Not as conquerors, not as masters, as friends. Council leader Junwoo leaned forward. This will be expensive. It will stretch our resources thin. Yes, Yuna agreed. But consider what we gain. Allies. Trading partners. A reputation as builders rather than destroyers. The Confederacy ruled through fear. We can lead through generosity. That is a power they never understood. The vote was not unanimous, but it was close. The Aurora Initiative was approved. Admiral Park Tae-ho did not attend the ceremony. He had already submitted his resignation, effective immediately. 40 years of service was enough. He wanted to spend his remaining years on Earth, watching the sky, knowing it was safe. His final act as admiral was to promote Captain Jiho. The younger man would take command of the Eternal Dawn and the rest of the Titan fleet. He had earned it. The ship is yours, Tae-ho said, handing over the command codes. Take care of her. Jiho accepted them with a formal bow. I will, Admiral. And I will remember everything you taught me. Tae-ho smiled slightly. The most important lesson was simple. Strength means nothing if you do not know when to use it and when to hold back. The strongest sword is the one that stays in its sheath. He walked away from the command center, leaving military life behind forever. Diplomat Hana was appointed as Earth's first interstellar ambassador. Her office received thousands of messages every day. Species she had never heard of reached out with questions, with requests, with simple expressions of gratitude. One message stood out. It came from a small species called the Kelori, who had been conquered by the Confederacy 800 years ago. They had almost forgotten what freedom felt like. The message was short. "Thank you for remembering us. We thought no one ever would." Hannah read it 3 times. Then she began drafting a response, offering whatever help the Kelori needed to rebuild their world. Voss did not return to the Confederacy. After the treaty was signed, he requested asylum with humanity. Commander Yuna approved it personally. He was given quarters on a human space station and time to decide what he wanted to do with his new freedom. For weeks, he simply walked the corridors, looking at humans going about their lives. They did not stare at him. They did not treat him as a servant or a curiosity. Some nodded politely as they passed. Others ignored him entirely. It was, he realized, the first time in his life he had been truly invisible. Not a soldier, not a subject, just a person. Eventually, he applied to work with a human academic named Professor Dohun, who studied interstellar relations. Dohun accepted him immediately. A former Confederacy officer would have valuable insights into how the old empire functioned. Voss spent his days reading human history, trying to understand these strange creatures who had built weapons capable of ending civilizations but chose not to use them. 6 months after first contact, a young Villani historian named Kira arrived on Earth as part of a cultural exchange program. She was only 40 years old, considered young for her species, and she had been chosen because she was willing to ask the questions her elders would not. Professor Dohun met her at the spaceport. He was 73 years old, with white hair and kind eyes behind old-fashioned glasses. He had spent his career studying conflict and cooperation between different peoples. Now he had a chance to apply that knowledge on a galactic scale. "Welcome to Earth," he said. "I hope your journey was comfortable." Kira's compound eyes studied him carefully. "It was long, but I am grateful to be here. I have many questions. Then let us find answers together." Over the following weeks, Dohun showed Kira everything: the great cities of Earth, the restored forests, and oceans that had nearly been destroyed centuries ago. The museums that preserved humanity's history, both beautiful and terrible. They stood before images of ancient wars, of empires that rose and fell, of suffering that defied description. Kira saw it all with growing confusion. "You remember these things," she said. "You put them in museums. Why? Would it not be easier to forget?" Dohun shook his head. "We remember because we must. These terrible things are part of who we are. If we forget them, we might repeat them. The museums exist to remind us what we are capable of, both the good and the bad." They walked into a new section of the museum, one that had been added after first contact. It showed the Eternal Dawn beside a Villani cruiser, both ships rendered at true scale. The human vessel dwarfed the alien one completely. Kira stared at the display for a long time. Then she asked the question that had brought her across the stars. "You could have destroyed us." The ambassador was rude and threatening. "Your ships were unstoppable. Why did you not simply end the Confederacy and take everything for yourselves?" Dohun stood beside her, looking at the same display. "Because we remember," he said. "We remember what it felt like to be small and afraid. We remember being conquered and enslaved by our own kind. We remember the pain of being powerless." He turned to face her directly. "When we became strong, we had a choice. We could become the monsters we once feared, or we could become the protectors we once wished for. We chose the second path." "But why?" Kira pressed. "Power exists to be used. Your history proves this. Humans conquered each other for thousands of years. What changed?" Dohun smiled gently. "Everything. Nothing. We are still capable of terrible things. Perhaps we always will be. But we decided that capability is not destiny. We can choose what we do with our strength." He gestured at the image of the Eternal Dawn. "We did not build these ships to rule the galaxy. We built them to make sure no one else could. To protect our home and our people. And when we discovered we were not alone in the universe, We extended that protection to anyone who needed it. Kira was silent for a long moment. Her wings shifted slightly, a sign of deep thought in her species. My people do not think this way, she admitted. We believe strength must be used, or it fades. We conquered because we could. We never asked if we should. Perhaps that can change. Dohun said. You are here. After all, asking questions your elders would not ask. That is how change begins. One question at a time. Kiera looked at the image of the two ships again. The eternal dawn seemed less threatening now. It was still massive, still impossibly powerful. But she understood it differently. It was not a weapon of conquest. It was a shield. I think, she said slowly, I have much to learn. Professor Dohun offered her his arm in a human gesture of friendship. Then let us begin. We have time. They walked out of the museum together, into the sunlight of an Earth afternoon. Somewhere above them, the Titan fleet held position in the darkness, watching over a species that had chosen hope over fear. Humanity had revealed itself to the galaxy, not as conquerors, not as victims, as something new. Protectors, partners, perhaps, one day, friends. The story was just beginning.